Possibly the most expendable member of a team, an NHL coach is constantly under extensive pressure to win. And sometimes with that pressure, along with a variety of personalities in the lineup, can be a breeding ground for tension. In this video, I'm going to go over 4 sets of players and coaches that once despised each other. And with that, here are 4 NHL players that hated their coaches. Having been in the league for over a decade, it's really no secret that Phil Kessel marches to his own beat. Therefore, while playing for a slew of different teams over time, he's had his adequate share of quarrels with his coaches. And one of those bench bosses that he had his bouts with was former Leafs coach Ron Wilson. The rift between player and coach seemed to be centered around Kessel's playing style, and according to CBC, Wilson held nothing back when asked about the Leafs' former struggles. Some of the core players have failed under 2 or 3 coaches, so it's gotta be the players' fault, Wilson says. You have to surmise that some of them might not be coachable. You can't rely on Phil, Wilson says. Phil's problem, and I think it's pretty much how Phil's been his whole career, is that he is 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. When he's not playing well, he's a hard guy to get on board and to get on your side. It's just the way it is. He comes and he goes, and he gets emotional. He lets that affect his game and his relationship with other players. That's what you have to coach, he says. After catching wind of the comments from the diligent Toronto media, Phil only fired back at the guy asking if he was difficult to coach. Gee, I wonder why. Anyways, taking all of this into account, there's no question that Kessel and Wilson had some adequate adversity brewing between them in the locker room. Possibly the most predictable on this list takes us back quite a bit in time to 2008, when Bill Peters was coaching in Chicago and Akeem Aliu was in his rookie season playing for the Hawks affiliate, the Rockford Ice Hogs. The bad blood between the two seemingly arose due to Aliu's choice in music. As Aliu was listening to some rap music in the locker room, Peters made it painfully clear that he didn't approve of the genre by making some explicit derogatory comments that were enough to later cost him his job. After the tirade, Aliu later recalls the aftermath. He then walked out like nothing ever happened. You could hear a pin drop in the room. Everything went dead silent. I just sat down in my stall and didn't say a word, he says. After remaining tight-lipped about the incident for years, Aliu eventually relented, following Mike Babcock being let go in Toronto and things coming out. And after a thorough investigation was conducted, Flames GM Brad Treliving revealed that Peters had formally resigned as coach of the Calgary Flames.
I will never forgive him for what he did while he was here and what he did to this organization.
Mike Keenan, one of the worst coaches conduct-wise that the NHL has ever seen. And during the mid-90s, Keenan clashed with the captain at the time, Brett Hull. Hull, who has been outspoken about his previous rift with Keenan, hasn't held back when recalling the coach's antics. He was mean-spirited. He was almost doing it out of pleasure to belittle people, Hull says. Hull also recalls the incident that reportedly robbed him of his captaincy. As Hall of Famer Dale Hawerchuk was slotted in to play in Buffalo, while his ailing grandmother would be in attendance, Keenan thought it was best to bench Hawerchuk for the game. Hull recalls that as punishment for standing up for his teammate, Keenan decided to appoint a new team captain shortly after. I snapped on Mike Keenan, and that's why he took my seat away, Hull says. You can take it, that's the lowest thing I've ever seen. And if that's what it means, then they can have it, he says. And the most recent rift to shock the hockey world was between former Leafs coach Mike Babcock and Mitch Marner. The incident took place during Marner's rookie year. While explaining to TSN the story, Marner recalls that his coach singled him out and asked him to make a list and rank his teammates from hardest working to least hardest. And according to The Athletic, Marner ended up putting himself at the bottom of the list, directly below former teammates Tyler Bozak and Nazem Kadri. Once the Leafs organization found out about the questionable exercise, they weren't too happy. As for Marner, who doesn't seem like the type to hold a grudge, was just thankful that his teammates had his back. You know, it's so long ago now. Honestly, I kind of forgot about it until the report came out, but it's over with now. It's done with, Marner says. I was lucky that the guys were there for me. None of them took it to heart, and they knew it wasn't up to me, he says.